Under the depths of the dungeon, on the 27th floor, as the ground in the cave continued to shake and rumble, as the oncoming doom and despair was set to befall Bel and his comrades, he wanted to know why. Why had Jura gone through the trouble of doing all of this? What would it gain? Besides trying to kill him and kill Ryu, apparently. Jura couldn't hold in the irony of it all. Just how foolish they had been to fall into his trap, to come all the way down here. But everything was going just as it was predicted to. His master had been aware of it all from the very beginning. She was the reason for all of this. I guess I shouldn't enlighten the dead, although it's not really going to matter. As far as the elf bitch is concerned, that's a personal score I wanted to settle. But I have friends, Bel Cranel. Friends in high places. Friends that don't like you very much. Or at least, they don't like what you could potentially become. You see, you probably don't even realize it yet. But there's more to that power than even you realize. And to some, you're considered a threat. There's a black market, Bel Cranel. A black market where heroes can be placed high on bounties. And yours is the highest of all. The only problem is that the stronger the person, very few are willing to go after it. But when the right circumstances come along, well, you see an opportunity, you have to take it. And my master gave me that opportunity. The opportunity to wipe the both of you off the face of this earth. The plan was simple originally. To frame Ryu for a crime. To send the hound dogs after her. Hopefully it would mean that Bel Cranel, the famed hero, would be the one to take her down. But you know the funniest thing? My master predicted that you'd become desperate. So desperate that you'd turn to the god of spiders for help and you'd receive his blessing. It's more like a curse. Figure that in your bloodlust, in your rage and anger, you wouldn't be able to think straight. Bel would have no choice but to hold you back. You'd have to fight with the intensity of the kill. Chances were that maybe one of you or maybe the both of you could take each other out. That was plan A. Then there was also plan B of using the Lambton snakes to potentially destroy you. But when that plan didn't work, there was also the idea of sealing you all inside with the blaze rocks. But even when all that failed, it didn't mean I was out of options. Ultimately, this is what I was after. Killing you all before we got to that point, it would have just been a bonus for me. But I get to see Plan D in full effect. You get to come face to face with the Harbinger of Doom, a being so powerful that even the gods tremble before it. What is he talking about? Bel looked to Ryu. He wishes to bring forth the Destroyer, a metal monstrosity capable of unleashing powerful flames from its eyes. It is very difficult to beat. No hero has ever been able to kill it in its entire existence. What? You mean not one hero? In all of the entirety of the dungeon's history, very little was known about the Destroyer. There were some gods that knew of it, but chose not to speak about it. They were terrible beings, but they were not created by the dungeon. No, they were created by something else. Something far beyond evil. And even still, the Destroyers were confined to the dungeon, down to the lowest of depths, so low that even when they spawned, it'd take them forever to get out, if any. But the last time that the destroyer came about, it resulted in the complete destruction of a familia. Its destruction led to the god of that familia going on a rampage through the 12 floors, supposedly. And it took the combined efforts of 2 gods to seal it away, to keep it from getting out, hoping that in time, heroes would grow strong enough to be able to finally kill it, since it was not their place to. Lord Hercules, Belle thought. The destroyer. It killed his familia. And not just that, it was able to go toe-to-toe with the 2 gods, Hercules and Thor. In the end, they sealed it away down here because they couldn't stay in the dungeon forever. After all, it's against the ancient decree that the gods are not allowed to enter into this sanctum. The best they could do was seal it because they didn't have time to kill it. It's said that there are 3 destroyers in total, but we only knew the location of the one. After finding where it was and how deep the spell was that kept it in case, I spent the last 5 years gathering as much blaze rock and stone that I could find, carefully placing them in strategic locations, waiting for this moment, the moment that I unleashed the destroyer. But why would you do something like that, though? Belle would say. The destroyer, it will bring untold chaos, not just to the dungeons, but what happens if it escapes? We're only on the 27th floor. That's not too far from the surface. What do you think, Belle? You think I'm an idiot? I wouldn't just summon a powerful beast if I didn't plan on taming it with this. This is what it's all about. To gain the power of the destroyer in my hands. And I will be the one to bring forth the great prophecy. I will be the hero. The prophecy? You don't even know about the prophecy? Huh. I wonder why they have you so high up in the bingo books then, if you're that clueless. The prophecy of Ragnarok, Jura would say. The prophecy of Ragnarok? Yes. A day when the stars will fall from the sky, and the sky will be blanketed in darkness. A day when the boundary between heaven and earth will be open, and the gateways to hell will be fully unleashed. Man, myth, mortal, God, all dwelling within the same realm. Destruction and chaos would reign across the days of Ragnarok. And it's said that on that day, only one will be left standing. He will be the last king, the king of the gods. During the time of Ragnarok, many of the former gods will fall. They will die and perish to the winds of time, to be forgotten for all eternity. But the one who will be the last king, he is the one who will reign over the new earth and the new heavens, the true God. That is the coming of Ragnarok, when the world will be destroyed in fire and ash. And from what remains, only one will rise to claim it, the one who is truly the strongest. That is the great prophecy, Belle Cranel, the prophecy of Ragnarok. It's said that only one hero will ascend to the throne. He will be the last king. And that will be me. I plan to tame the destroyer. I will conquer the dungeon and conquer the other ones that lie hidden. I'll conquer every monster and beast. Everyone will be under my control. Forget familias. I'll build my own familia. A familia, a ferocious and powerful beast. And when the time of Ragnarok comes, I will lead my forces against all other familias. With my master leading the way, I will be the one to claim the throne. The last king. It will be me. No one's going to stand a chance. Not you, not Hercules, not Miss Freya. None of them. I will be the last one. I will be the king. You are a fool, Ryu said. Foolish enough to believe in such a thing, and even more foolish to believe that you will come out of this unscathed. You are nothing but a wretch, a mere worm that crawls with its belly to the ground. You aren't worthy of being king. You won't even survive this. I won't, will I? Well, let's see how tough you're able to talk when you're gasping on your last breath, Ryu. Today's the day where you and that damned bellboy die. As if speaking the ominous words into existence, the cave walls would break through as Ryu and Bell would see for themselves the Destroyer, a metal man of monstrosity that stood tall, almost to the point where it was as tall as the cave itself. It was covered in metal spikes, its eyes sunken black, but the faint glow of flames behind them. Ryu and Bell were both terrified to see the Destroyer in full force as it loomed towards them. Members of Boar's party attempted to fight them off, but they were slaughtered, Boar's calling his people back to retreat. Bell took hold of Mjolnir in that moment as he looked to Boars and to everyone else. I'm gonna take care of this thing. Boars, you get back up to the 25th floor. Get to my party. Tell them all to evacuate the dungeon immediately. What? Are you sure about this, rabbit's foot? We can't just leave you two. If we all stay, we're all going to die. Get up to the guild. Alert Miss Ines to what's going on immediately. We'll get as many heroes together as we can. If I can't bring this down, you guys need to be prepared up above. Worst case scenario, you need to destroy the entrance to the dungeon. Destroy it! Bell, you can't be serious. This dungeon, it's a part of our way of life. What are we going to do if we just seal it off forever? Do you know how dangerous this thing is? If just one gets to the surface, everything will be lost. Please, you have to buy it some time. Boris didn't like the idea of leaving Bell alone, but ultimately, he didn't have much of a choice. Based off of all the people who had already been killed, if they attempted to stay any longer, they'd all only be slaughtered in the process. For now, the best thing they could do, the only thing they could do, was give Bell the space he needed to battle against this monster. Ryu would stay alongside Bell. She wasn't going to leave him in the wind. Not like this. For Jura, this was everything he had ever wanted. He'd get a chance to see the power of the Destroyer up close and personal, watching it do away with the so-called Thor, and to kill Ryu. Bell would charge forth with Mjolnir, spinning it around on his wrist as he went flying and charging directly towards the monster. The Destroyer was able to shoot fire from its eye beams, Bell blocking with the Valkyrie shield, but even still being knocked back. Ryu would pick up a large boulder with her enhanced strength given to her by the blessing of Anasi, the spider god, throwing it directly at the Destroyer and creating a diversion, long enough for Bell to transform Mjolnir into Gungnir, the Spear of Heaven. Charging it with Lightning Bolt, he threw it directly at the Destroyer, knocking it back to the ground. But that wasn't enough, not even close. As Bell summoned his weapon back to his hand, the Destroyer was already on its feet. It looked like it had barely been scratched. Ryu would attempt to buy more cover for Bell. Shooting webs from both of her wrists, she would attempt to pin down the Destroyer, as Bell would transform his weapon from the spear to the battle axe known as Stormbreaker. He jumped high into the air, attempting to cave in the monster's chest. The blade was barely able to make a dent, before Bell was blasted away with another powerful fire blast from its eyes, the destroyer ripping away at the webbing that was keeping it pinned down to the walls of the cave and to the ground itself. Ryu would attempt to go in with a few strikes from her wooden sword, imbuing it with powerful elven magic, but even that wasn't enough. The destroyer truly lived up to its name, seeing as how it was able to overcome almost everything that both Bell and Ryu could throw at it. Even when they attempted to use a combination attack, with Ryu attempting to pin down the monster once again, with Bell aiming for the head, that still wasn't enough. Whatever the destroyer was, whatever it was made out of, it was something otherworldly. But then again, that was to be expected. They were fighting against a monster that was able to put up a fight against both Hercules and Thor. It was foolish to think that they could just take it down with just the effort they had. Even for being two level 4 heroes, this was still a completely different level of power, far beyond what either of them had ever experienced or comprehended. A level 5 or 6 might not have even been enough. Maybe not even a 7 or an 8. They'd probably need a level 10, and who knows if that was even enough. The destroyer continued its onslaught, attacking both Bell and Ryu. Ryu jumping from wall to wall of the cave itself. She had her senses enhanced with the power of the blessing given to her by Lord Kawaku, a Nasi, the spider god. It was the reason why Ryu accepted the power in the first place. Anasi was a close friend to Estrella, the god of the familia that Ryu once belonged to. Anasi, he remembered the day fondly, the day when Ryu came out of the cave, out of the dungeon. Estrella fell into despair, so much so that she exiled herself back to the heavens. The despair of losing her familia. Poor Ryu was left all alone with no one to look after her. Anasi took her in. Of course, Ryu wanted revenge. Anasi tried to dissuade her from such a course, but ultimately, he too felt as though he wanted vengeance. He offered to help her, to give her the power she needed, to take her into his familia, even though he didn't have one. But Ryu didn't accept it. She never accepted the blessing of Anasi. Of course, she had heard the stories about those who had tried to. There was only one time where their relationship was strained. It happened when Ryu had tried to go after those who had attacked her familia and she was gravely injured. Anasi attempted to force his blessing upon her, to heal her and save her life, but she rejected it. It was the one time where the two of them truly didn't see eye to eye. The reason being was that the blessing that Anasi gave, the power of the spider, it was known as both a blessing and a curse. For some unexplainable reason, something that Anasi could never truly fathom, those who accepted the power of the spider, while they did gain great power, they suffered great loss as well. It was almost as if the power led to the ultimate irony of life. To be so strong to save everyone you care about, but never strong enough to be there for those that need you the most. Everyone experienced it in some way, shape, or form. Oftentimes, those who sought the power usually came after suffering a great loss. You could say that with great power also came a great sense of responsibility. That was why Anasi never took on a familia of his own. Because to have a familia was the ultimate responsibility of a god or a goddess. To look after your followers, to care for them, to watch out for them, to teach them, to train them, to watch them grow. That was responsibility. Anasi had tried to take it on once, but suffering loss, After the last of his familia died, he chose to never take on someone else ever again. Except for Ryu, he wanted to make the exception. To do so in the memory of his friend Estrella. He wanted to help Ryu. But for Ryu, she wanted to do it her own way, with her own power, not to rely on anyone else. But why has she changed her mind? Why did she accept the blessing now when she wouldn't before? It was because Ryu felt desperate. She couldn't explain it, but there was something telling her that something bad was going to happen. Something dangerous. Something she felt she might not be able to come back from. That's why she took on the blessing. She figured that the curse, the supposed curse that came with this power, it would probably result in her death. But if it meant that she could get closure, if she could finally finish what she started, if death was the only price that she had to pay, then she'd gladly pay it. After all, she could only be killed once. So to take out all of her enemies, she'd simply have to take out more of them before they could get to her. But still, nothing could have prepared her for fighting against the Destroyer. Neither her or Belle. As Belle was taking another swing with Stormbreaker, Ryu felt the tingle. She felt the spider sense form, but it wasn't warning her. She looked to Belle immediately, warning him to turn back. As Belle raised his arm, holding his arm high with Stormbreaker, preparing to channel Argo Vesta lightning bolt and to strike down the Destroyer. The monster moved swiftly enough, punching Belle's right arm clean off before another punch from its metal-spiked fist connected with his chest. Belle had lost his arm. He had been punctured, and he was bleeding out. Ryu would move to Belle immediately, trying her best to heal him. The Destroyer, continuing its rampage, ended up kicking Belle into the waters down below. For Ryu, she felt like this was the end. Jura was loving every second of this. Everyone had always hyped up Belle. Belle the hero. Belle, the second coming of Thor. The mighty warrior, Gale Thunder. Rabbit's Foot. Little Rookie, he was even called. But in the end, he died. He died pathetically at that. All that hype was misplaced. However, for Jura, he was not spared as well. The moment he tried to tame the Destroyer, he was merely kicked away. That single kick doing more damage to him than even Ryu could ever think. Every rib was broken, lungs punctured, coughing his own blood. He didn't understand. He thought. But then again, a fool dies every day. As Jura slowly realized that the artifact he had been given to tame the Destroyer was not what it was promised to be. He was deceived, merely to do the work of his master, the Enchantress. She lied to him. She deceived him. She merely used him and his familia to do her dirty work because she knew he'd be discarded. In the meantime, Ryu took every ounce of strength she had. She shot multiple webs all across the ceiling. as the destroyer was getting ready to lunge right at her. She channeled as much magic as she could into the webs. She said a soft prayer. She apologized for dragging Bell into this, and she only prayed that if he had made it to the other side, to his Valhalla, that he would have his vindication. She pulled down the ceiling. With all of her strength and force, she pulled it down upon her and the destroyer, sending them crashing down lower and lower into deeper levels of the dungeon. In the meantime, far above on level 25, Lily and the others were worried about what was happening to Bell. When Boris finally came back, he told all of them that they needed to book it to the guild and to the surface immediately. Of course, Lily was against this. They couldn't leave Belle behind. She wasn't going to. No one wanted to leave him, but Wealth, having no choice, grabbed her by the coat and yanked her on, much to her dismay as she kicked and screamed. They couldn't leave him. They couldn't leave Belle. But Wealth explained that right now they were no good to him the way they were. Whatever was down there was far beyond anything they could do. If they tried to stay, they'd all end up dying. All they could do was have faith and hope that Belle would survive. In the meantime, as Belle floated in the water, Marie the mermaid, using her healing power, would restore his arm, but his injuries were still grave. Through the waters, she also saw Ryu. Grabbing the two of them, she guided them down the current. Ultimately, she couldn't follow, but she only could hope that they would be safe. They descended lower and lower into the dungeon, crashing rocks, debris, the destroyer following close behind. But while the destroyer ultimately landed on the 32nd floor, they went down deeper and deeper and deeper. As Bell would slowly awaken, opening his eyes once more, he found himself with Ryu wrapped in his arms. Ryu was slowly coming to, but for now, they needed to figure out where they were, because they had gone deeper into the dungeon, deeper than they had ever anticipated on going. Bell remembered something he had learned from Miss Aina, something about this level in particular, a dangerous level that even for level 4s of their caliber, they were not supposed to be here. Bell had lost most of his supplies. He had no strength to try to summon Mjolnir wherever it had landed. For now, he and Ryu found themselves trapped on the infamous 37th floor, known as the White Palace. Meanwhile, on the 32nd floor, a woman dressed in green and black, her hair a flowing and shimmering blonde. She surveyed all of the damage that had been occurred in the dungeon. Jura, you naughty boy. All I asked you to do was summon the destroyer, not to knock it down into more levels. She summoned a green gemstone. Finding the destroyer crawling from the rubble, she placed it on the forehead of the metallic beast. At first, it seemed as though it was going to lunge at her, before getting on one knee and kneeling before its new master. That's a good boy. It seems we find ourselves on the 32nd floor. Troublesome. We'll have to deal with a couple of pesky monsters, and maybe the Xenos if we run into them. No matter. I say at our current pace, we should be able to make it to the surface, I'd say within 8 days' time. Well now, chop chop, time to get to work. The destroyer did as instructed, as it started paving the way for them to make their way out of the dungeon and to the surface above. In the meantime, the other adventurers had no shortage of time to waste. They had to make it back up as soon as possible. They had to warn them of what was coming. Boris only gave them a vague description of what he saw. A true monster if he'd ever seen it, unlike anything. A metallic man with spikes all across its body, and it seemed to shoot fire out of its eyes. Whatever they were going up against, the guild needed to be made aware. Orario, it needed to be prepared for the worst. Hestia was also worried. Worried about Belle, about everyone. Hercules could feel it though. In just 8 days, that damn monster, it's going to make its way up. What? 8 days? Hestia would think. Anansi was also worried. How bad could one destroyer be? He asked Hercules. If me and Thor were here, I have no doubt we could kill it. So what? Are you saying that the other gods are that inept? I'm not trying to belittle you, Lord Anansi, Hercules would say. But you and I both know that the destroyer is not something that can be taken lightly. Because it's the only monster that's not made by the dungeon. It was made by something else. By what? It was a monster created by Gore, the God Butcher. Hestia couldn't believe it. That thing? It was made by Gore? Yes. We don't know how strong it truly is. Me and Thor didn't fight it long enough to find out. We fought it down to the 28th floor long enough to seal it away. We had hoped that with enough magic we used, it would keep it down there, long enough until adventurers could potentially grow strong enough. But honestly, I doubt level 4 is going to do it. There's no time to worry about that. We can only hope that the others make it back up to the surface in time. We're going to need all the help we can get. There's said to be 3 of them, but we have no idea where they are. If just one makes its way out of the dungeon, even if we manage to kill it, this city, all its people, it will be lost. The coming and pending doom now loomed over the city of Orario. For in just 8 days' time, the destroyer, the harbinger of despair, would make its way to the surface, bringing only calamity and darkness with him. This concludes Danmachi, The Last King. What if Cranel was Thor? Season 4, Part 5. And I'd like to say that this will conclude Part 1 of Season 4. Now, as some of you know, Danmachi Season 4 is divided into 2 parts. The first 11 episodes and then the second half, which are the second 11 episodes, because Season 4 is 22 episodes long. So what I've decided to do with Season 4 for myself is I divided it into 2 halves, where I would cover the first half of Season 4, which is episodes 1 through 11, And then I will cover the second half, which will be 12 to 22. I'm not going to be doing the second half next week. I want to try to break it up a little bit, do some different stories, just to keep things fresh and keep things light, keep you guys in anticipation. But don't worry, we will be doing the second half of season 4 this year, just a little bit down the road. I want to try to get some more of my newer stories in, just to give you guys a different feel. Next week, we are going to be doing double features. So that means a video in the morning and hopefully a video in the afternoon. But just want to let you know that could be subject to change. We do have something special planned for tomorrow, a special presentation, a episode 0, if you want to call it that, for a series that I want to do on the channel. But we're just going to do episode 0 to see if there's enough interest in seeing a series like this. But that's a surprise waiting for tomorrow. But still, I want to take this time to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's been supportive of this series. Thank you to everyone, who's gotten back into it. This was one of my early stories that I did on the channel. And since we've gotten into Anime Marvel Phase 3, to get back into doing a lot of the older stories that I did when I was first starting out, that really got a lot of traction, and to see you guys still be into it, see you guys still be fans of it, it really means a lot to me. So as always, thank you. Like I say, you make the channel grow, you make the core grow. But without further ado, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time. All right, Marie, calm down. Calm down. Now, explain to me what happened. A metal monster. It attacked. It hurt Belle. Belle? You mean Belle Cranel? That guy that Korg's been talking about. Yes, a friend of Mr. Korg. Please, Mr. Bill, you have to help him. I really don't want to get involved. Okay, point to me where he went. Marie would point to Mr. Bill directly where Bell and his friend had fallen. Well, that shoots all the way to the 37th floor. Oh, God. I'm not even supposed to be going all the way down there yet. At least not without backup. Please, you have to help him. Yeah, I'm going. You stay here. Stay out of sight until I get back. As the orange-skinned being hopped further down below, using a torch to light his way, he saw something shining in the distance. It looked like a weapon of sorts. He could probably use something like that. As he got closer, he reached towards the weapon that was caught and embedded deep in the rock. It looked like an axe, or a hammer, or a mix of the two. He gripped around the handle and slowly began to pull it out. At first, he thought he might not be able to lift it, but after giving it a decent enough tug, he was able to get through to it soon enough. Despite its size, it felt pretty light, easy to hold. It was fine quality. There was inscription written on the side. If he or she be worthy, then maybe having the power of Thor. Lightning would begin to shoot from the axe itself, enveloping his entire body and changing the tattered and ripped clothes he had worn into something fine and pristine like that of armor. Oh, what the hell? Bill said aloud as he took time to examine himself. Well, one thing's for sure. The boys back home are never gonna believe this.